New class changes. What's up guys, Petko here. Welcome yet for another video. Today we're discussing the new class changes that came 10 hours ago, maybe less, 5 hours ago. And how are they going to influence the meta, if they will. Alright, first thing we're having Aug Evoker, the old tier piece gets nerfed. Good news, you don't have to cheese the old tier set. Now you can play with the new 4 piece. Your damage will be unchanged. So pretty much good old. They shouldn't have allowed Augmentation Evoker old tier piece to be that OP for a long time though. We are already 3 months into the season, even more than 3 months, so yeah, good stuff. Resto Evoker healing got buffed. The Living Flame, Spirit Bloom, healing full spells 4%, Eco Baseline. All of this for me is more of like a rate changes than M+ changes, because healing was, to be fair, never really a issue for them in M+. I mean, overall good stuff. Yeah, welcoming. Survival Hunter, Explosive Shot by 15% buff, Fury of Ego 25. Now they'll be closing the gap between NM and BM. Are they going to become the best Hunter spec? Likely not. I believe it's still going to be the worst, Hunter spec. I still believe MM will be better, BM will be better, etc. So yeah, not too shabby for now. Frost Mage, this is actually the third buff in a row for Frost Mage. This is the worst performing mage spec right now. And because of this buff, again, I believe they got buffed baseline a few weeks ago. So now they were positioned in around A tier. They're likely going to jump to A+. Just because of this small, tiny, tippity buff to Frost Mage. I believe, again, the rate performance is what they were trying to target. Just because their pure ST as Frost Mage wasn't really that good. But then again, if you wanted to get more ST, why do you just overall buff their AoE too? On and on, that gives it an idea of the weakest, mage spec will become better. All the mage specs this season 18 insanely good. W mages. Holy Power in some changes. Lightsmith, Blessing of Forge by 15%. Lightsmith, Hammer, and Anvil healing by 20%. I'm not sure if that's gonna make them switch back to Lightsmith. I think this might be a little bit too small of a buff for that. But again, welcoming. And as I already told you guys, Shadow Priest buffs are gonna come, and as you can see, Psychic Link got buffed by what? 15%. Give or take 15. Again, the value going from 30 to 35, it's 15% because 10% of 330 is 3%. And yeah, around that number. Maybe a little bit higher than that number, like maybe like 16 or so. Like 16 and a half. Which is pretty good for Psychic Link, meaning that Shadow Priest might be back to mid-ish tier. They're right now bottom DPS, like bottom 5 DPSers. This buff might bring them more in line with like in the middle of the pack. Halo also got buffed by 30 and Entrophic Rift buffed by 12%. Good stuff for Shadow Priest, likely the most notable change here for them. Sub-Rogue buffed by 5%, that's pretty good. I think Sub-Rogue ST was suffering a little bit in their rating, so this will, close the gap for single target to most of the specs, and also implement further AoE buffs, which again, I don't think they needed AoE buffs, but, I'll take it. Welcoming stuff. Restoration Shaman, we only see Farseer buff so far, Totemic unchanged. They're trying to make Farseer as competitive as Totemic. Are those changes going to be enough to make them? I am not sure. We gotta be testing it out. Destruction Lock also, Diabolist got buffed. Now keep in mind that people were playing Hell Color instead of Diabolist. But Diabolist now got pretty juiced up. This might make you switch to like Diabolist in rate. I think in Metric Plus, Hell Color is just way too good for now. We'll see. I guess we're gonna be testing it once next week comes in. And last but not least, we're getting a Arms Warrior buff, Whirlwind by 100%. Kind of irrelevant, but sure. And Fury got buffed by quite a bit. Whirlwind again irrelevant because everybody was playing Mountain 10 and M+. But Thunderclap by 25% and Mountain 10 Thunder Blast damage by 25%. That's pretty good. Those are hefty buffs for Fury Warrior. I think they were labeled as bottom 5 DPS. They might climb now a little bit, specifically if you play with a physical comp. But keep in mind, you are one of the few specs that is still target capped. So that is obviously an issue. People were playing Arms Odin Fury. Odin Fury got buffed by 30. They weren't playing Odin Fury as much. I mean, quite frankly, almost none. But they might starting to switch back to Odin just because of that buff. We'll see, guys. We gotta be testing to see what's up. Anyway, that's everything so far. How is this gonna change the tier list? I don't think they're gonna change the meta at all. Neither of the meta classes got buffed or nerfed, so that's good news for you. I believe the bottom performing specs like Fury Warrior, Survival Hunter, Shadow Priest will get some bumps up in slots. Frost Mage likely entering from A tier to A+. Resto Evoker, in my opinion, still stays the bottom healer. I kind of, surprised there is no tank adjustments, but overall, take it. Anyway, see you guys in game to be testing it. Catch you next time. Bye for now. Follow for more.